Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a book that I've recently read, and that's a pretty nice book. And I want to present a book summary in front of all of you so that you get to peek into what that book is about, and if interested, you can read it and also understand the bigger issue that the book talks about. So the book I am going to to talk about is Slow Puncture. So it's written by Peter Berry and Deb Byrne. So this book is basically about living well with dementia. So this book is a story of Peter Berry and his experiences of living his life through the dementia. So this is what we are going to talk about. So the brief background of the book I've already told. It's a story of a man named Peter Berry who is diagnosed with dementia at the age of 50. Now dementia is usually diagnosed, or people generally report it after the age of 60 or 65. Less than 65 it's called as early onset dementia. So he was diagnosed with dementia, and in dementia what happens is that it's a neurological disorder. The brain gets affected in dementia, and once your brain gets affected, of course the memory, cognition, language, perception, personality, all these things are affected. So dementia literally creates a lot of problems for a person and also his family members down the road. So yes, one more important thing is he had an early onset dementia, probably because his father had dementia and this had a genetic cause. So once he is diagnosed with dementia, initially there is a lot of despair in the family, and there is a lot of shock and disbelief about what has happened, even though Peter's father had dementia. However, after that time passes, which of course is a tough time, there's some sort of strength that returns in Peter's mind, and then he decides to change something about it. And this book is about what he decided and how that changed how he lived with dementia moving on. So in a brief graphics, I would show that he was living a happy life. This is Peter Berry. This is the exact photo of Peter Berry. He had a successful timber business, but his wife sort of finds out that he has something unusual going on, and he seemed to be forgetting things, and that's when she understood, okay, we need to see a doctor. And they had some confusion, and they had some doubt about what exactly it is, but the diagnosis confirmed that it was dementia. And once this diagnosis happened, it was like a dark cloud over the happy family. So eventually, when the diagnosis was out, they felt completely isolated initially in the community because nobody seemed to be having any idea about dementia. Furthermore, the business that Peter was managing seemed to be crumbling down because of his deteriorating cognition and brain health. It was not possible for him to continue on his business like he was doing before, and he had to quit from his business. Quit would be a wrong word. He had to leave his business, and his wife took over eventually. And because Peter was going through so much of psychological turmoil during this time, he contemplated suicide too during this time twice. But just when he was about to commit suicide the second time, at that moment he just stopped for a moment and thought to himself that and this dialogue that you see below is exactly what I thought, that can I make a difference in whatever time I'm left with? So this simple question changed his total perspective on what he was going through, and next we see how it completely changed the trajectory of his life. So Peter, he started to take on cycling. He had always been fond of cycling. So this particular type of cycle is called a penny farthing. And he gets on his cycle and begins to think that, and this is taken exactly from the book as it is, so even though there were some things I could not do, and more things will be taken away from me by this dementia, but there were still so many things I could do. So this is a ray of hope that comes in Peter's life, and he decides to embrace that hope. So first thing he does is he draws the cartoon. He draws the cartoon of dementia, so that he has now given an image to the dementia monster. And so this is the dementia monster that Peter draws in his in his life, and then every day it's like he's fighting with this monster. So as I mentioned before, Peter and cycling had always been close buddies, and so he decides to cycle, and in cycling he finds his salvation from dementia. So he starts to intentionally do long distance cycling to create awareness on dementia, particularly because his experience has made it very clear to him that the awareness and sensitization in the community is very low. You don't get health insurance if someone in your family has dementia, so that literally crumbles down the financial status of the home. And with lack of support, with lack of health insurance and financial assistance, all these personal situations and trials he and his wife faced together, Peter decides to change something by creating awareness. So he starts on his own, but slowly the group increases. That's what happens. There is another person, very important part, who has played in Peter's story and in writing of this book. This is Deb Bunt, who becomes a friend to Peter in his journey, and she's also the cycling partner of Peter, and she takes the onus of writing the experiences and story of Peter in a sort of a book. So obviously, because Peter has hard time writing it, so she sort of captures his memories and writes about it in the book that is Slow Puncture. So this is Peter Berry and Deb Bunt together, and in some point of slowly Peter Berry gains recognition as a torchbearer for dementia, because he's cycling long distances and he starts giving talks and sessions on dementia in public events. So as a result of which the awareness on dementia is increased, and it is all happening because this man has taken a resolve to do something about his dementia. So you can see his will and his determination, even though it falters with time many times, but he just keeps on taking actions. He never really stops taking action. So eventually he knows that he may not be able to cycle for long, because his perception of cycling or directions or something will make it challenging, but with whatever time he has, he decides to do something. And he mentions in the book that cycling allowed him to feel strong and in control and feel empowered. So now we will talk about two challenges that Peter Berry covers with his friends to raise awareness about dementia. So this is a small map of United Kingdom where Peter is based. So I zoom it down to a bigger map. So the plan is to start from Suffolk, to go to Cambridgeshire, then to go to Lincolnshire, and then to Norfolk, and cover this distance. So this distance is sort of a circle, and Suffolk is where Peter is based, so it's his home. So the idea is to cover the 4 counties, and this becomes the 4 counties challenge that Peter Berry covers with his friends, and they end up raising over 12,000 pounds for Young Dementia UK, which is an organization working for people who have young onset dementia in the United Kingdom. So you see, and it's almost 210 miles distance, and it would take definitely more than 4 hours 59 minutes from the cycle. It shows car over here. So this is one of the challenges that Peter Berry covers with his friends, and they are able to raise quite a huge amount of money on that. And then this is the short image that shows Peter and his team as they cross the finishing line after the 4 county challenge. So he's riding a penny farthing, and it's not easy to ride a penny farthing. The second challenge they cover together is Cycling Down Dementia Challenge, and in that, on behalf of Alzheimer's Research UK, from 1st November 2019 to 31st January 2020, they raise over 1,500 pounds, and the weather is really tough during that time in the UK, and they cycle 1,600 miles in rain and wind. So this guy with his team, see, they are cycling for dementia to create the evidence. That means they've become so aligned with the cause and with the whole dementia thing, that they've transformed and sort of transmuted their pain to a light and a hope for others, so that the others are still aware of what is happening and they don't just give up to dementia. So this is a image showing Peter and Deb after finishing the Cycle Down Dementia Challenge. This is taken from the book, and this is also taken from the book. This is Peter contemplating the future challenges. Peter Berry, also in the process of understanding dementia, he started creating his YouTube channel, in which he every week on Friday he would come and put a 9 to 15 minutes video about how his progress is going, what is happening, and he would sort of video document his life. So this is the YouTube channel of Peter Berry, and it's made for every week about how his dementia is progressing. And I think this is a really very important resource for anyone who wants to understand dementia and how it really happens in a person's life. I will provide the link of this channel in the YouTube in the description of this video. The idea is that this guy tried everything, even when he knew that there was less hope. It all appeared bleak, and at the age of 50, but still he persisted, and that's what I find really touching to me personally. So I'll share some of the quotes from the book for you, which have really touched me. So the first thing he says in the initial part of the book is that dementia was not the thing that robbed us of our dignity, but it was the reactions of others which did. So this clearly points out that they were quite lonely and isolated in the initial phase when the dementia diagnosis was happening, and that emotional support was missing when the terminal illness was diagnosed. And so this indicates that how much important support is, not only from the doctor but from the community also. And this support can only come when there is awareness, there is sensitization, and there is dialogue and discussion about dementia in our society. The second quote is that he says, "My cycling had become much more than cycling. It was my new freedom, my only freedom and bit for autonomy. It is about going out and doing. It is not about where we end up." So this particular quote I find applicable to wherever we are in our lives. See, he felt really empowered when he cycled. He could sort of forget that dementia monster back at home, even though he knew that when he will get back to home, he will see it right there. But on that particular day, he would have defeated it, at least for some point of time. Cycling gave him that in the period of depression and despair. So all of us also have, I think, this ability to understand what is it that can give us joy in our darkest moments. The other quote is, "Dementia is like riding a penny farthing," which is the cycle that I've shown you before. It's hard to master at first, but very possible to do with perseverance. So it's really very difficult to have that energy when you're diagnosed with a terminal illness that directly attacks your brain. I cannot even imagine. But I think he gave me a lot of hope and realization that even though life can be difficult, we don't have to falter. There is always something that we can do if we persevere enough. And lastly and most important, dementia is a diagnosis for entire family, because our family members live with us, and especially in an Indian society, when the caretaking falls into the shoulders of the family members, which is often called as the informal care. So if a elder person in the family has dementia, it really comes upon all the people. They see him or her living through dementia and taking care of him. So even though Peter was living with dementia, but his family members were witnessing it and very, very connected to dementia. So dementia is a diagnosis for entire family. This is Peter and his wife Teresa, who stood by him and took care of him throughout, and always was there to support him, and also learned to manage the finances and business. I think it would have been really, really very tough time for the couple. It's absolutely very difficult to imagine at the age of 50 Teresa finds out that her husband has dementia, and the times that will come will be quite challenging, but they are together and face the challenge head on. So that's really, really very inspiring, I found. So there are 4 lessons from the book that I have extracted, even though there are many lessons and they will be subjective, but these are the 4 ones that I took personally. So first is hope. I think if we have hope in the darkest of times that there will be some morning or there will be some light, then we will be saved, like Peter was saved when he was going to commit suicide. But at that point of time he had a sort of hope that okay, even though brain is shrinking, but there is still I can do while it's there. So he had a hope, and that hope encouraged him to pick up his penny farthing cycle for dementia. And then in the process he touched so many hearts, so many places, and created such a huge value for the cause of dementia, just because he could see that hope, and hope is always there. So this book, even though it's about dementia, it is also about hope, I would say. Secondly, the book clearly shows how important family and friend support is when you're battling a terminal illness. People who are there to support you, people who are there to encourage you, to uplift you in your darkest of times. And by not bypassing your pain, by not bypassing your heart, no, they acknowledge it, but then after that they also make you believe that there is so much that still resides in you. So this is one thing I really found quite touching, that in our darkest of times, if we have that family support and authentic friendships, we can pull out of that situation. The third thing is that and most of us should know that a bad day can be a less bad day if we go to exercise or do some kind of physical activity. So little physical exercise can go a long way in uplifting our mood. So there are many times when we face troubles and problems in our lives, when nothing seems to be going right. Even if you go for a walk, or do some workout, or go for running or walking or cycling, or move our body, it really helps us feel better and makes us believe that okay, we can take on this challenge. So this is the third lesson I learned from the book, and I personally go for cyclings, and I started cycling recently, and Peter Berry's story really, really encourages me to go on cycling. And lastly, one of the lessons that we can take from the book is that whatever situation is given to us in our life which is causing us pain, we will experience that pain, but maybe because we are experiencing that pain, we can always do something to lessen the similar pain that others will share through our journey. So we face the pain, but we create awareness and sensitization so that others, when they go through the same journey, they will feel a little less pain. And lastly, these are few of the snaps of Peter with his friends which I have made in the last page, just so that you can see that this person had early onset dementia. Life seemed to be ending, but he did not just give up dreams, he fought. And in quite some time, this is the book. This is a very small book, not more than 150 pages, but I find it's a very, very powerful book. And by sharing his, chunk of life, Peter has really given me lots of inspiration and motivation, and especially in the darkest of times. So I'm really very thankful to Peter and Deb for writing this book. And you have made a difference in so many lives, not only with people with dementia, but also the young people, who will have all these kind of challenges in the future, and you have created awareness through this book. So thank you so much, Peter. And this was the summary of the book Slow Puncture. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much.